It is my distinct honor to introduce tonight's keynote speaker, Bishop Gene Robinson. For those of you who don't know, Bishop Robinson was the very first openly gay person ever appointed as bishop in the history of the Episcopal Church. That in itself is truly historic. What's also historic is I'm Episcopalian, and I refrain from drinking tonight so I would be sober. But equally as important is the miraculous work that Bishop Robinson has done on behalf of LGBT people across the country, around the world, over the last decades. As the world's leading religious spokesperson for LGBT rights and equality, he is literally changing the way the church relates to LGBT people, which, as we all know, hasn't always been a positive relationship. He has written and spoken extensively about the need for the civil rights of LGBT people, especially from the perspective of the church. You've probably seen him in the documentary, For the Bible Tells Me So. He is the author of 3 AIDS education texts for youth and adults and has worked extensively in the United States and Africa to educate people about HIV/AIDS. In his new book, God Believes in Love, Straight Talk About Gay Marriage, Robinson lovingly and persuasively makes the case for marriage equality using a common sense, reasoned religious argument. Let's take a moment to learn a little bit more about Bishop Robinson's incredible work.
Gene Robinson is gay. When he was installed as the 9th Episcopal Bishop of New Hampshire, he became the first openly gay bishop in the history of Christendom, something a lot of people in his church just can't accept.
He wore a bulletproof vest to his proverbial first day on the job, and he's had death threats and verbal attacks ever since. And this is a man of the cloth. He's just out with his brand new book, God Believes in Love, Straight Talk About Gay Marriage, and Father Robinson joins me now.
Isn't that the message of Scripture, that we are to value all of God's children, even God's gay and lesbian, bisexual, and transgender children?
God believes in love, and God believes in love for all of us, and that all of us deserve the gift of marriage to nurture that love.
And if the church won't cooperate, well, so be it. God will have God's way with the liberation of all people anyway. And as usual, the church will come limping along, bringing up the rear.
We've got teenagers killing themselves because of what groups like this are saying. So we want you to hear that we would like for other Christian voices to be consulted, even conservative Christian voices, but just not those associated with what is clearly a hate group, because it's killing us and it's killing our kids.
Right.
We're not so scary. We just look like the person next door, and what Americans all across this country, as their sons and daughters or nieces and nephews or co-workers or former classmates come out to them, is that all those things that we've been told are wrong about gay people just aren't true.
So hang in there, be strong, and know that despite the messages that you get from religious people, God loves you beyond your wildest imagining and only wants the best for you. It gets better. I promise. It gets so much better.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming to the stage the Right Reverend Gene Robinson, 9th Bishop of New Hampshire.
Thank you so much. I hope Lana is still here. Are you still here, Lana? Good. I want to say that I came this close to taking my shoes off before coming on stage. You know, Moses took his shoes off when he understood that he was standing on holy ground. And I feel like listening to you, Lana, that I hope you take this the right way. I feel like I've been to church. When we all know that it's a holy moment when we come out and for the first or second or 1,000th time, let people know who we really are. There is something deeply spiritual going on there, and I just want to tell you, I'm totally moved. So thank you. It is a total delight to me to be back in this wonderful, wonderful city, and for this occasion. HRC has been so important in my life, and I've been a part of the Religion and Faith Council for HRC, and Sharon Groves, who heads that up now, is just doing an incredible job working with religious communities on our issues. Religion is my beat, right? It's what's important to me, and it ought to be important to you. It is still at the center of this debate. Whether you like it or not, whether you participate in it or not, it is just true, because 95% of all the discrimination that you and I have experienced in our lives as LGBT people comes at the hands of religious people. And even non-religious people use religious arguments against us. Recently, we have seen the religious right claim that there is a war on religion. That is about as bogus a claim as I've ever heard. In Maryland, in the state of Maryland, where at the ballot box they will vote on marriage equality very soon, 71 of the 92 words in the ballot measure are devoted to the protection of religion. It is just simply not true that there is any kind of war on religion being waged by those who would advocate for marriage equality. We've made a lot of progress in the Episcopal Church since my election and consecration in 2003. We now have a second gay partnered bishop in the Diocese of Los Angeles. And at this last summer's General Convention of the Episcopal Church, we authorized a liturgy for the blessing of same-sex unions and marriages. And this, I am just stunned to tell you, because I thought it would be a ways off. This summer, we welcomed transgender people into every level of authority in the church, as lay people, as deacons, as priests, and as bishops. I'll be speaking on Tuesday night in the state of Maine, and the following week in Seattle and Tacoma, and then also in Minneapolis. Those places, along with Maryland, are the places where our lives are on the line for those who live there. This is the moment, if you know someone in one of those states, even someone who has voted against us in the past, this is the time that you need to make that phone call. And whether it's your Aunt Tilly or a former classmate or whatever, call them and tell them that if they vote against this measure in their state, they're voting against you and your loved one. This is a spiritual journey we're on, and I appeal to you to let progressive religious people work with you. We want to help. And when someone throws a Bible verse at us, it doesn't scare us one damn bit. This is about more than tolerance. I get quoted a lot because I often announce that I am here to speak against tolerance. Well, you know what? it is better by a mile than intolerance. But it sets the bar way too low. If you've ever been on the receiving end of mere tolerance, it just doesn't feel all that good. I have a friend who says the only thing one should have to tolerate in life is hemorrhoids. What we are talking about is the acceptance and celebration of gay and lesbian, bisexual, and transgender people. And what is so important about HRC's work is that it goes way beyond tolerance as well. It gets at the systemic issues that face us all, because at the end of the day, it's not just hate that we are facing, but it is a systemic discrimination against us that is lodged in the law, in the culture, and in the mores of the society. As the old saying goes, it's not enough to pull drowning people out of a raging stream. You have to walk back upstream and see who's throwing them in the first place. That's the important work that HRC is doing. I want to just say a moment, take a moment and say what I think our challenges are for the future. This election is really important. I mean, wouldn't you like to meet one of these undecided voters? Like, who are they? And what more do they need? We are fighting state by state for our equality, and we're waiting for the Supreme Court of the United States to give us the rights that we deserve. But even when we get those rights, and we will, it won't be over. It won't be over. Just because we took Jim Crow laws off the books didn't mean an end to racism, God knows. Just because there's funding for women's sports did not make sexism go away. And even after we have marriage equality and the end of DOMA and a fully inclusive ENDA, there will still be work to do. And it is so easy for you living here in California or me living on the East Coast in the liberal Northeast to just get used to our bubble, this blessed bubble that we live in, where you can go through most days and not be reminded that there is discrimination out there. But let me just remind you, most of the country, it is not true. It is simply not true. And so it seems to me that the challenges that face us, first of all, are with young people. You know, we have a group in Concord called Concord Outright. It's for LGBT and questioning teens. And I was with 6 or 7 of them one night, and not a single one of them had grown up in a religious household, not one. But they all knew the word abomination. And they all thought that's what God thought of them. Even the ones who didn't believe in God thought that's what God thought of them. Now, they couldn't have found the book of Leviticus in the Bible if you had pointed a loaded gun at their brain. But they knew that word, and they thought that's what God thought of them. It's in the air we breathe, and we need to clean the air. Let's remember. Let's just remember every day that we've got kids jumping off bridges and hanging themselves. And until that stops, we haven't made all the progress we need to make. And unlike Lana and so many of us who have had wonderful reception from our families, let's remember that 40% of all the teenagers living on the streets of our cities are LGBT teens who have gotten kicked out when they came out. So youth, hugely important. Second of all, this is in my notes long before Lana spoke, I think the transgender opportunity is going to be a big challenge for us. Because as challenging as the gay and lesbian movement has been to the culture, the transgender movement, I think, will be very much more threatening. I mean, let's remember how this all started. We unfortunately got started on this little spectrum between gay and straight. We had the gay community, and then we had the straight community. I believe it was Dr. Kinsey who got us going on that little continuum. And then all of a sudden, we had lesbians saying, hello, we're here, and our experience is different from gay men. So we became the gay and lesbian community and the straight community. And then bisexual people spoke up, and then transgender people spoke up. And now we have intersex and queer and question. I mean, I didn't check this morning to see if there were any more letters to use, but we're going to run out pretty soon. And what a wonderful thing it is for us every time we say LGBT to point to the diversity within our community. So my question for all of you straight people is, how come you don't have any letters? I mean, like, how do you get away with just being like one big glob of heterosexuality over here? So I want you to go away and talk amongst yourselves and then get back to me and let me know what letters we should be using about you. Because at the end of the day, I think this is about human sexuality. And sometimes I think we have focused so much on homosexuality as a nice and convenient way of not talking about our own sexuality. And until this discussion expands to include all of us talking about our sexuality, we will have not achieved any real progress. And I think that the transgender community offers us the opportunity to learn so much. And by the way, I think the transgender experience is as difficult for gay and lesbian people as it is for straight people. There is a lot to learn, and you need to get to know some transgender men and women well and learn from them. We have all got a lot to learn from them. Thirdly, I think for us to continue to gather straight allies is going to be incredibly important. We will never be more than a very small minority. And we need you straight people a lot. You know, back in the 1960s in the civil rights movement with African Americans, it was astounding to see these people going into the streets to fight for their rights and risking everything. And then finally white people woke up to the fact that we were paying a terrible price for racism as well. And when we joined in that movement, it just added a whole nother level of involvement. And so we need heterosexual people to join us in this movement in order to make the kind of progress that we want. And, you know, I don't really know the history of the naming of this organization, but whoever did it got it so right. These are human rights that we're campaigning for. And lastly, religion is going to continue to be a challenge. And we have to take it seriously. We have to join with those who are progressive in their understanding of Scripture and their understanding of God's call to us. There is no question in my mind that God is in the middle of this movement of ours. And I've said to churches time and again, you know, God is going to have God's way with or without the church. And we're always accused of giving into the culture. Well, who said God couldn't work in the culture? So we need to keep working on religious people. I have this funny ministry. I have one foot in the LGBT community and one foot in the religious community. And I'm trying to translate one to the other there. But a lot of you are religious too, and I know it's harder to come out as religious to the gay community than it is to come out as gay to the straight community. But for those of you who are religious, don't be ashamed of it. And call your religious organizations, whatever they may be, to be their best selves and to ask the question, could the church, could the synagogue, could the mosque have gotten this wrong the way we got slavery wrong and the subjugation and denigration of women wrong? So it is a huge honor to be here for the Human Rights Campaign dinner. The Human Rights Campaign has been our ally and our advocate and our friend. Even when before we even knew they existed, they were our friends, standing up for us in places where we can't be. And I am so excited about Chad Griffin and his new leadership position in this organization. Chad grew up in southern Arkansas, and I grew up in central Kentucky. And when we were chatting recently, we were finishing each other's sentences. There was something so iconic about that atmosphere. And yet, here we both are, right? Doing this wonderful thing. We have not only forward momentum, but we have what I believe is an inevitable forward momentum. And you know, it's really funny. The conservatives know it too. They know how this is going to end, just like you and I do. This is going to end with the full inclusion of gay and lesbian, bisexual, and transgender people in the life of this country and in the life of our religious organizations. And all we're really arguing about now is timing. But timing is important, because how much longer do you want to live without all of your equal rights? Not long, I hope. And so this is really important work that HRC is doing, and your role in supporting that work is just incredibly important. Let me end by telling you about a place I hope you visited. If not, I hope you will. It's one of my favorite places in the whole world. It's the National Civil Rights Museum in Memphis, Tennessee. It's at the old Lorraine Hotel where Dr. King was assassinated. It's there sitting amongst warehouses and so on. It was the only place, the only motel that would house him when he was there for the strike. And just as you go into the lobby of this old motel, there is now a huge monolith of marble or granite, black, and carved in bas-relief in this ever upwardly spiraling circle is a trail of African Americans. And every one of them is holding someone else's hand or standing on someone else's shoulders. Most of everything I've learned about our movement, I learned from being a part of and watching the movement by African Americans for their own freedom. And the thing that is so moving about this sculpture is that, first of all, it acknowledges that we all stand on the shoulders of so many. The Daughters of Bilitis and the Madison Society back in the 50s, Harvey Milk in the 70s, and so many more. The transgender people and others at the Stonewall Tavern who just finally got sick of putting up with the harassment. We stand on the shoulders of so many. But the thing that I find so inspirational about the movement of African Americans in the 60s was that those people went into the streets knowing that they would face snarling dogs and fire hoses and sometimes death itself, and they went anyway. And most of them knew that they would not live to see the end of racism, and they went anyway. We will not be able to achieve our full civil rights in this country unless we are sometimes willing to sacrifice Sunday brunch. We have got to work hard, and we have got to be willing to pay a price. Sometimes that price is just writing as big a check as you can, but sometimes it's showing up and having difficult conversations in places where you know you won't be welcome. But if we want our freedom, like those who have fought for their freedom before, we need to be willing to pay a price. What I believe we have learned from our heroes of the past is that you can't put a price on freedom. There is nothing more important than our full citizenship in this country and our full participation in the religious organizations to which we belong. It is astounding, isn't it, to be alive when this is happening right before our very eyes. If you're anything close to my age, you know that you didn't grow up even dreaming about what we are seeing with our own eyes today. We have a lot to celebrate, and we have a right to do it. I expect to see you on the dance floor. But in the meantime, make those calls to Maryland and Maine and Minnesota and Washington, and let's work between now and Election Day to see that our dreams really do come true. Thank you so much. Good night, everyone.